You are listening to Inspired Caring with Michelle Magner, episode number 156. Hello, welcome to Inspired Caring. I'm your host, Michelle Magner. If you are caring for an older family member, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I bring insight, tips, inspiration, and strategies to help you care for the people that you love without losing yourself along the way. Having cared for both of my grandmothers, I've helped manage everything from hospital stays, households full of belongings, to navigating senior living and end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience, serving my residents and their families as they've been on this journey too. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Inspired Caring. Hey, you guys, at the end of this episode, I have a special treat for you. My previous episode, episode 155, was with Colin Roberts, singer, songwriter, and he and I were talking about our mutual friend, DeAnna. Well, this episode is an interview with DeAnna about caregiving for her dad. And at the end of this episode, there's a clip of the song that Colin wrote especially for her family in honor of his memory. Enjoy the clip. I am very delighted to welcome DeAnna to the podcast today. Hello.
Hello, glad to be here.
We know each other from multiple spaces. And after I presented one day, you came up and said, oh my gosh, what you were talking about family caregiving and self-care just really struck a chord with me. So I'm really pleased that you felt comfortable to come on and just share your story with us about your experience as a family caregiver.
I'm glad to do this. I will tell you the first time that I watched you speak was actually April of 2023, and my dad had just passed in January, so it was still very fresh, and it's still very fresh for me. So what you're doing is something that I share as frequently as I possibly can when I know somebody is in that similar context.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. So you and your family rallied around your dad.
We
Yeah.
did. My dad was a full-blooded Italian man who raised us, me and my three sisters, and then I have a younger brother. But he raised us very tight-knit family, yet we also were very connected to our cousins and aunts and uncles and all of that. And my dad became ill about 21 years ago. He kept complaining that something was wrong. I thought he had an ulcer. We won't go into it. Long story short, my dad was diagnosed with what they called an autoimmune liver disease. And the liver itself, in normal circumstances, would reproduce itself. But when it's autoimmune, all of his liver enzymes were attacking the liver. So
Mm,
he had to go on a ton of different medications, and liver transplant was tougher, partly because of his age, partly because of his weight. There was a few other things that kind of stopped him from getting a liver transplant. And truly, um, we weren't in the right place for that. So anyway,
mm,
for the first 5 or 6 years, everything was self-contained pretty well. And then he had some pretty big setbacks from a medical standpoint. And then he moved in with me and my husband and my kids about 9 years ago. And part of it was financial, and part of it was I was recognizing that his health wasn't even as good as it had been, the prior couple of years, although he was still doing pretty good. But what had happened the last 3-ish years is it really started to deteriorate in so many different ways. Unfortunately, he had fell in December of 2020. We know what, well, not, I'm sorry, it was December of 2021. We
mm.
know what was going on during that period of time. Um, he ended up having to go into assisted living for a little while. We couldn't see him. So there was a lot of things going on with him. But again, he lived with me, and then we started to deal with some organ issues because the liver and the heart and the kidneys work so closely with each other.
Hmm.
Um, we started to see a pretty big decline in his numbers and doing everything that we could. But the last year and a half were really tough, maybe even 2 years, where he'd get a lot of um, fluid buildup that would help, hurt his breathing. And then we'd have to take him in and we'd have to do Lasix. And he was on all these medications to help cleanse his body because of his liver. And so a lot of managing different parts, right? So it got to
Hmm.
the point where it was me managing the medication and then, helping organize all the doctor's visits and me also making sure that we had some help with home health coming in, to check his blood every week. And then, I also wanted someone to come in and do some light cleaning and just kind of be there to give him a different voice because here's where the struggle came for me is he's my dad
Hmm.
and I wasn't quite ready to have him there yet. Yet I knew that I needed to help take care of him, but I wasn't quite emotionally ready for it. So I found myself at times angry. And my emotional self, because I am Italian and I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and that can be good or bad at times. But I would, if he would call me and say, you got to do my pills, right? So I would do his pills every week, to make sure everything was organized right. And then I would get mad at him. Like, I know
Hmm.
I have to do your pills. I don't need you to call and tell me. But
Where was he
when
living at that time?
with me,
He was living with you.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had the situation was really good for him. Our basement's finished. And I had two bedrooms in the basement, a full kitchen, a full living room. And he could also, at that time when he was driving, he could drive his car around and walk straight in. So he never had to deal with stairs or anything like that. So everything worked really well. And I was really okay with my dad living with us. It was a little hard on the family. Like my husband wasn't sure what was going on. My husband thought he'd only be there for like a little bit, and 9 years later, he's still there. But I think I just had told my husband that I just can't see him anywhere else.
Hmm.
And my husband agreed. He's like, I can't either. So anyway, a lot of just organizing and taking him back and forth to doctor's appointments. Now, mind you, I was traveling a lot. So there was a lot of moving parts, right? And I'm not gonna say I didn't have any help, but it was me and my son that did most of the heavy lifting when it came to my son. Oh, came to my dad.
Yeah.
Um, my dad and my son were very close, and we just we did a lot of the lifting, a lot of the taking him back and forth to the doctor, and all of those things that kind of came into play.
How did you make the decision to weave in home health? Because I think that's something that a lot of families struggle with. Like they're trying to do all the things. Here you have children, you're working, you're traveling for work. Was there a pivotal moment that you just thought, we just need a little more help?
When he started to tell me that he was lonely
Okay.
and he was living in our home, and then I realized that my son was, 17, 18 years old and he loved his grandpa, but, he didn't want to spend every fleeting moment with him.
Mhm.
So I think it was when I noticed that he mentioned that. And then the other thing I will say, which I think was a differentiator for us, and I don't know how other people feel about that, but the VA, my dad was a veteran.
Mhm.
And so when I shared any issues, whether it was medical or it was on the emotional side, they were fantastic. So it was things like after he fell, let me give you an example. When they brought him home, we had to redo everything. We had to redo the bathroom. We had to have everything had to be secured down, right?
Mhm.
And that's when I knew that I was going to need more help with him. Um, like it really shifted. Laundry, I had to do the laundry. I had to make sure everything was clean. Everything changed after he fell.
It sounds like you went from like a cohabitating situation to like a care situation.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
And by the time it got to the care situation, he really couldn't drive anymore, and I certainly didn't want him driving on his own. Because then we were dealing with that, and then we started to deal with a lot more health issues with the kidney problems, and he had a couple bouts where we thought we were going to lose him, but then they did dialysis, and then he got better, and it was just a lot of up and down and up and down. And my dad was a fighter
Hmm.
like no tomorrow, and especially if he saw us. If he saw me, he was always like, I'll be fine. I'm
Hmm.
just gonna do this and I'll be fine. So that's kind of what happened. And then he just took a turn for the worse towards December of 2022.
So you had someone coming in to help with, it sounds like light housekeeping. Did they also like help with medication management or taking him to the doctor, bathing? What kind of things were they helping?
Bathing. So they were doing bathing, light cleaning. They would go to the grocery store for him. So if he wanted certain things, they would run to the grocery store for him, but not medication. I did that.
Okay.
And then we also had a nurse that came in every week to do his INRs. And again, that was the help of the VA helping us do that. I mean, it did take some work on my behalf. I had to balance Medicare insurance, and I also do remember this too, and I don't know if other folks have to deal with this, but when they had to put him in assisted living, there was some financial responsibility, and my dad did not have any money, so I had to bear the costs of paying for the 2 weeks that the insurance wouldn't cover it and VA wouldn't cover it. So there is some financial burden that came in there too. Thank goodness I
Right.
was in a position to help him, but yes.
And did your family, I mean, you come from this big, robust Italian family, everybody's involved, everybody's in everybody's business, everybody's talking. Like, did everybody agree? Were you all on the same page every like step of the way, or were there disagreements within the family?
So predominantly it was me and my sisters that I did keep my younger brother in the loop, but it was predominantly me and my sisters. But at the end of the day, if a decision had to be made, it was on my shoulders.
Hmm.
I was his emergency contact, and without getting into a lot of family drama, I didn't get a lot of financial support, and nor did I get um, emotional support. I think my sisters had been so used to me taking care of everything that they
Hmm.
just figured I was on autopilot.
Right.
And the organization that it took to take care of him, and then plus those moments like if I wasn't going to be there, if I was going out of town, like organizing everybody to make sure, say, somebody do this, Dylan's doing it this day, Dana, you're doing it this. I mean, all of that was on my shoulders.
Right. I know a lot of times what I'm seeing in caregiver support groups is people who have the parent living with them. They literally just feel like I can never get away. Like I can't leave. I can't leave for a full afternoon, let alone a night.
Hmm.
But it sounds like you were just really working hard to make sure things were in place that if something like that, you needed something like that or it had to happen, that
Hmm.
be cared for.
Yes, and then I will say, if I organized it and everybody knew what base they were playing, then we were fine. It was just,
Right.
I think for me, um, my dad only felt comfortable if I did the pills. Like he did not
Right.
want anyone else doing the pills. And I would say, I taught them how to do it. No, I don't think they know how to do it.
Right.
So a lot of it was him too, just what made him feel most comfortable. Not that I mean, he loves all of his kids equally, but I just think he felt more comfortable with me.
Sure.
Everything was always DeAnna. We need to call DeAnna. We need to ask DeAnna.
When he was at assisted living, was that like for a rehab stint? Like, so he
He broke
was,
his arm.
he broke
He
his
broke his
arm.
arm.
Okay.
Yeah, that sucked. It was really bad.
What do you feel like went well? What went right over the course of that time, just as things evolved? Like, are you able to give yourself credit yet? Sometimes I think that's really hard to do. Um,
Um, I am now,
yeah.
and it's only been within the last probably month where it started to where I where where I was able to realize how much I did do,
Hmm.
and give myself the grace and the credit that I deserved. Credit probably isn't the right word, but give myself the grace and the forgiveness because I think my biggest issue wasn't when I was going through it. It was when he was gone.
Mm.
When I realized that I wish I would have been more present and and not do everything like it was an automated process. Like take the moments to sit down there and do the pills with him because that's what made him happy. Um, and I can't get that back.
It's hard upon reflection. Our brains immediately go to shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Mhm, mhm.
And we can
Yes.
shoulda, coulda, woulda back ourselves into a corner.
Mhm,
I what a thought that I love to offer you that I have found comfort in is I really not only did I do the best that I could at the time, that I was operating at the speed of information and where I was in my life at the time, and that what I did at the time was what they needed at the time.
mhm.
That God has a plan for us. We proceeded on path as to how it was supposed the exchange and the caregiving and how it was supposed to happen at the time.
Mhm.
So that for me has brought me a little bit of peace and comfort.
Thank you. And again, I would tell you that I have come a long way with the grace aspect of where I was at, like realizing that um I did do I did do a lot of great things when he needed me, and I was okay being the person that he relied on the most.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have it actually any other way. So, it worked out exactly how it was supposed to. It really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talk about moments of true happiness, like there are times when I look back and I think of how much joy my kids and my nieces and my nephews brought my dad, and you could see it, right? And how hard he would push himself. So family for him was absolutely everything, and his grandkids lit up his day if he could just see any one of them at any given point in time. And that was my biggest joy of having him live in my house was to see his face when he saw those grandkids.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
nothing replaces that.
literally the most special moments.
Yes.
Do you, when you think about that time, because we are operating at the speed of information, were there any logistical type tasks that you would have had a different piece of information that you felt like could have been helpful? Uh,
Hmm. I logistical, I had gotten to the point where I was really seriously thinking about getting him van service to and from the VA for all of his appointments. I didn't because my dad was like, "Well, no, you need to be there. Like, I mean, who's going to ask the questions? And you're the only one that knows everything." And I'm like, so I just the good thing is for me, Michelle, is I was home because 2020 hit and I was no longer traveling, and most of his ailing or his failing health happened during that period of time.
wow.
So I could be there, but I contemplated it towards the very end. I was like, maybe if I could just get somebody to help transport it back and forth, right? Like, because we had gone back and forth on whether, we didn't, at this point, we weren't sure whether dialysis would be something that would work. We were having the conversation with the doctors. Unfortunately, it wasn't an option at the end, but we had considered it. And I was talking to the doctors at the VA and the social worker that they assigned to you. And we were potentially going to go down that route, but eventually we didn't because my dad just did not want, he did not want to go in the little bus.
Mm-hmm. So that would have been
So that
nice.
would have, yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice. It would have certainly helped out. It would have.
Right. Yeah.
But I did have good other resources. Like I said, my son and my younger brother and my sister would step in when I needed them to help. So that worked.
That's really great.
Yeah.
And you just had the anniversary of his passing not that long ago.
January 9th.
What would you share with someone? I mean, we really cannot prepare to lose a parent. There's really nothing we could say or do, but for someone who is in the throes of this right now, they're trying to help their parent right now. We're not sure how long they have left with us. Is there just anything that you would like to share with them?
Well, I would share that the cycle of life or the circle of life is real. We never, when we're in our 20s and our 30s, and probably even in our 40s, we don't think about taking care of our parents. We just don't. We're living in our context and raising our kids, and we don't think about the idea of taking care of our parents. And
Mhm.
when I started to realize that that was what was happening, like I said, I don't feel like I was present enough. And that is the one thing I would say to people is take every moment you can and be as present as you possibly can. And I know that people say that all the time. They do. Live in the moment, take those moments. But I would say absolutely take those moments. When we talk about the caregiver, the other thing I will also say that I think I realized after losing my dad was not only was I dealing with the loss of my parent, my father, the guy that kind of was my backbone, in so many different ways. I had this huge space now of what I thought used to be draining on my time. And
Mhm.
I had all this open space again. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? He, like, I got to do his pills, or I need to do his laundry, or he needs something, or he's got to go to the doctor. And all of that was gone that fast. And the truth of it is you have to deal with the loss of a parent, but now you've got to fill this other void that if that caregiver mode is gone.
Right.
And then you have to allow yourself to take that caregiver and put it back into your own self. And that is not easy.
It is not easy. I had moments and patterns. My mother-in-law lived in an assisted living memory care. And I would have these moments where I'm driving around and like my routine was to pop in and visit her. And so you're going from Costco to the house, and now I don't have to stop anymore because she's gone. It's
Mhm.
like almost confusing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that that's one thing that I would say probably for me was a little bit the most eye-opening. And I will say that my family even told me that. I mean, my sisters were like, it's going to be hard on us, all of us in our own unique, special ways, but it is going to be that much harder for you because of what you have been doing for the last, 5, 6 years of really, truly taking care of him.
Right.
And it was a void that took quite a while for me to fill. So it did.
How did you give yourself grace through that? Like, what's our first step to begin to fill that void or ease our soul?
Well, I believe it or not, as a business coach and a professional career coach, you would think I would journal, but I don't. But I did start journaling. And journaling helped me a lot as I wrote how I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also just, I, I really worked consciously on allowing myself to grieve. I just, when I talk about being present in my grief process, everybody in my family thought I should be at a different place, which I thought was funny. And believe me, we're not shy people. So we're always very, direct and open about where they think. And I just continued to allow myself the freedom to cry whenever I wanted, to be by myself whenever I needed it. So I think the journaling and allowing myself, the other thing I will say, and my dad was in hospice in our home for, the 10, 14 days before he passed. Hospice actually really helped me. Um, they called every 2 weeks and then every month for 13 straight months.
Wow. After he passed away.
Mhm.
Wow.
It was amazing. They did a great job. They were fantastic.
Finding out what bereavement policy the hospice company has is such a great idea.
Mhm.
And then you were willing to receive those services. Like you were willing to take those calls and allow them to check in with you, which is beautiful.
Mhm. I just got my last letter from them, and they sent every month like a kind of a grief process,
Mm,
which was really helpful to let you know kind of maybe where you were at in the grief process, which I found was really instrumental and very helpful. So I really appreciated that. So again, kind of going back to your original question, what would I do? Just allow you the process, forgive yourself, because I think a lot of people probably were in the same place I was, feeling guilty that maybe I didn't do enough, or why did I do that, or mad at myself because maybe I yelled at something I shouldn't have yelled at, right? Dealing with your own frustration when you're a caregiver, it's kind of no different than being a parent. We're not perfect as caregivers of our parents. We get mad, we get frustrated. We have to be real. We're human, right?
mm,
We don't walk this earth perfect. And I going through those motions, I was okay in the moment, but like I said, later I just wished I had, like I said, been more present, been more but just be
mhm.
there. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart and your dad's story. And it sounds like he has quite a legacy.
thank you. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate being on here with you. And again, from the moment I met you to the moment where we're talking right now, I think what you're doing is so purposeful and so needed. Because I will tell you, the last comment I'd like to make is when I met you in April and I sat and I listened to you talk, when I met you and told you I wish I would have met you before, I
Mm,
truly meant that. Because the deal is that when we have somebody that we can release our thoughts and feelings with, and they are an unbiased view who also comes in with more of a level of I don't want to call it just experience, but a level of understanding maybe is the right word to use. Provide a little guidance when guidance is needed. I wish I would have had that, because I would say, even though I had my sisters and my husband, and it's not like I didn't have a support structure, but I sometimes would feel guilty if I said I needed help. Or
mhm,
sometimes I would feel like I was burdening other people if I said I needed help with him. Or I would get angry if they didn't read my mind.
mhm,
And the deal is, if I had somebody during that period of time, we probably could have perfected maybe the ways to address that, right? How to ask for help, when to ask for
mhm.
help. When I just kind of ended up doing it all myself most of the time because I didn't want to burden other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And especially when we are that family member that just feels so responsible. And as a coach, I'm sure you are very dialed into who you are and how you operate. It is very hard to ask for help.
Mhm. Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, thank
So
you for saying that.
you are welcome. You are doing great things.
Well, I wish I would have been able to walk the journey with you at the time, and I'm very grateful to you for sharing it with us now.
Perfect. You are very welcome.
Hello, it's your dad. You better call me back. I know it's been a while since we've had dinner plans, holidays, pasta on Sundays. You see, I'm just checking in.